now my personal pleasure to herald the return of Wilmington Opera Society to the Grand Opera House with its new season. And the new season begins next week, Saturday, November 14th, with the evening performance of Puccini's stirring opera, La Boheme. And there will be 2 more performances to be presented. They'll be on Friday, November 20th and Saturday, November 21st. And to conduct some of the most beautiful, tear-jerking music ever to spring from classical Italian opera is my next guest, the music director of La Boheme, Barbara Silverstein. Barbara, pleasure to have you here.
It's very good to be here. Thank you.
Barbara, with the opera right around the corner, I'm really glad you could fit us into our schedule. And also, this is, I understand, your first experience with the Wilmington Opera Society. Do you feel, as I do, that we have a real treasure here in Delaware?
Oh, very much so, yes. I think it's wonderful that a state as small as Delaware is has an organization as large and as capable as this one is. Mm-hmm. Very fine.
But you're no stranger to opera companies. I understand that you founded your very own opera company called the Pennsylvania Opera Theater?
That's right, yes.
How did that all come about?
Well, I'd always treasured opera since I guess I was in high school. Mm-hmm. And as I got more involved in it as a rehearsal pianist and then gradually became a conductor, I decided that there was room for the kind of opera company in Philadelphia that did the kind of opera that I really loved, which was opera as music theater, opera that presents the work as not only a very wonderful musical experience, but one that's a wonderful dramatic experience as well, and visual experience. And so I decided I would try to create such a company.
And I understand it's doing very well.
Yes, it is. We're in our 7th season now. And we're performing at the, I don't know whether people from Delaware have heard of the Troc, but it is
yes, we have.
It is an ex-burlesque house.
That's right.
Which once upon a time was an opera house in the 1870s and has been restored to its former splendor. And it's a really charming little house. It's a little bit like the Grand Opera House here, not quite as large, not quite as elegant, but the same idea, the old horseshoe-style house. Very lovely.
Now, so conducting for the Wilmington Opera Society must be sort of a vacation for you.
Yes, it is, because ordinarily when I work with my company, I'm concerned about all the administrative details of running an opera company as well as conducting the music and worrying about the singers. And here all I have to do is worry about the music. It's a luxury for me.
Mm-hmm. Now, what do you particularly like about this opera, La Boheme?
Oh, any number of things. I'm basically a romantic. I think you have to be to like opera anyway. And it's a very romantic story. It's a love story about very young, vibrant people who are creative people, a poet, a musician, a philosopher, are the main characters. And their story is a very poignant one, and the music is so lush and so stirring that I think just about anybody would fall in love with it. I think it's a great opera for first-time opera-goers to go to because it deals with exciting young people, and the music just grabs everybody on a very, very immediate basis. It's a wonderful piece for any number of reasons.
It has an interesting set, too, doesn't it?
Well, yes, it can. I think our particular set designer, whose name is Leland Kimball, has done a very lovely job with some interesting ideas. The set that you're looking at is Act 1 of La Boheme, and it's an interesting challenge to come up with something which is visually interesting to the audience, but also indicates that this is a garret that's lived in by a lot of poor, young, starving artists. So the challenge was to show something that looked as though people who were starving were living there, but was still interesting to look at and artistic, and I think that Kimball has achieved that, or Kendall, I mean.
And, of course, the costumes, where are they made and where do they come from?
The costumes are designed by the Wilmington Opera Society and are built by people right here. That's one of the things that's unique about the Wilmington Opera Society and quite wonderful. They have a large number of volunteer organizations that build the set for them and also build their costumes. And we have here a costume that is worn by Mimi, who is the leading soprano. And it's really quite a lovely outfit, I think. One of 3 that she wears.
Now, I understand the actors are, some of them local?
Yes, there are a few. I guess the most important role that's filled by a real local person is the Alcindoro, whose name is Tom Conrad. Randy Marazzo, who's singing the leading role of Mimi, is not from Delaware, but she was at the University of Delaware for quite a while as a student, and she's from Philadelphia. And Noel Velasco is also from Philadelphia, originally from the Philippines, and he is one of the winners of the Pavarotti competition, which got so much attention last spring. So we have that's one of the things that's so wonderful about this cast, too, is that the cast is young and handsome, and they all look like the characters that they're portraying, so the opera audience doesn't have to get so carried away with the music that it can forget the fact that it's got a 450-pound tenor singing the lead and a middle-aged woman singing the soprano lead. They all look like that. The soprano was young and lovely, and she looks like she could be dying of consumption, which is rare.
Well, it's sung in English, and I understand you're a strong supporter of opera sung in English.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think that all of the composers that wrote the great operas that are standard parts of the repertoire today had their operas performed in other languages while they were still alive, and they wanted that to happen. They thought it was ridiculous that people should go to an opera and not understand what people were singing about, and I think it is too.
Well, you know, I think the argument goes that the language that it was written in Italian is the most beautiful language, and it loses something in the translation. You don't believe in that?
It all depends on the translation. If you get a good enough translation, and if you get singers who really are adept at singing English, as more and more singers are becoming, then you're all right. And whatever minimal amount you might lose in actually changing the sound of the original words is so much gained by the increased comprehension that you get. And also, no matter how well-schooled a singer is in Italian, if he's basically an English-speaking person, he's going to feel a lot more comfortable with the English, and he will be able to portray the musical and dramatic aspects of the character so much better because it's his language that he's singing, and it's his feelings that he's depicting rather than somebody else's words that he understands.
Now, opera isn't understood by a lot, yet you've dedicated your whole life to it. Do you feel it's an important expression?
Absolutely. I believe that, well, I guess what really made up my mind for me was I was in Italy maybe 10 years ago before I ever thought about starting the opera company, and I saw a production of Carmen in Verona, it was, that's right, and it was in an arena that seated 22,000 people. The opera was sung in Italian, interestingly enough. Carmen is probably one of the most standard operas in the world, and there I was in Italy, and they were doing it in Italian rather than in French. I thought that was great. And there were 22,000 people there, and they came with their baskets full of wine and mineral water and cheese, and they had a ball, and they screamed and yelled at the ends of the act the way we scream and yell when Mike Schmidt hits a home run. It's just wonderful. Really great.
I want to thank you for coming on our show.
Well, thanks for having me.
And I hope you all go see La Boheme at the Wilmington Opera Society production at the Grand Opera House the 14th of this month and the 20th and 21st. Tickets are still available at the Grand Opera House. And I think your being here tonight will stir some of our viewers to buy some tickets. Thank you very much, Barbara.